good afternoon, everybody. Old guy jamming here. Hey, let's make a quick foot switch for one of your foot switchable amps. One of those amps where you just need a simple on-off to switch on some reverb or change a channel or kick on a boost. All right, first you go down to the thrift store and you pick out yourself a nice enclosure. Now this can be anything. This one happens to be a wireless phone jack system. I don't know, it cost me $1.50. And then you take that apart and you make sure you have room enough inside for your components. You're going to need a simple mono jack, just like that one there, easily purchased on Amazon. You're going to need either a double pole throw switch or a 3-pole double throw switch, but one way or the other, you're going to have a switch that goes from on to off, and or from on over here to on over here with a common pin in the middle. Now this one happens to do that. It just does it 3 times at once. So there's 3 switches in here, 3 poles. It's a double throw because it goes, this middle pin is common, but then it goes from this side being on all the way over here to this side being on. However, we don't need to do that in this situation. You would need to use all 3 if you were looking at actually, you would use just 2 different switches for a stereo plug. But we're only going to use the common pin in the middle and any one of these outside pins. All right, to know which ones, super easy. You can get your voltmeter. I like one that's audible. And we can try this middle pin and then this one right here, no tone. We make the switch and we should have, and we do. We've got tone. If we switch it off, tone goes away. So those 2 pins would work well for our situation, as would these 2 pins and or these 2 pins, or those two, or those 2, because it's just really simple. But it's hard to find switches, foot switches, that don't have about 9 or 6 pins on them. So it's just what you got to do, a little bit overkill. Now, you want a hole gauge, or you can use some calipers, or you can just guess, whatever you want. But having a hole gauge for your drill makes things kind of easy. You run this down here, and we find that, you know what? 23/64 works really well, nice and snug. You could just go ahead with 3/8. That's why we have washers, so you can take care of any slop. I like to go smaller and then clean it out with the correct size. Once I've drilled it 2 or 3 sizes smaller, it just seems to make a nicer hole. If you make your pilot hole something smaller, not too small, but smaller, and then clean it out with the correct size. All right, so this is a 3/8 will work great for our jack. This one, oh, going up, going up, going up. Bigger, bigger, ooh, 15, 30 seconds, and or 16, 30 seconds would be a half. A little bit sloppy, but who has a 31/64 drill bit? I don't know anybody with a 31/64. So you would probably just go with a 1/2 inch. But again, go with something smaller, especially if you're drilling plastic, because it has a tendency to warp once the bit enters the plastic, because the plastic's not real rigid, it's soft. It tends to bend and warp a little bit as you drill through. So drill small and then clean it out. You can even clean it out by hand with a bigger bit. All right, so then we've drilled our hole here for a foot switch. Just make sure you have room inside, you know, with your enclosure. Make sure you have room inside there for the wires and stuff. Good, got that. And we drilled a hole in the back for our jack. Now you could hardwire this right to the switch with a cord, instrument cord, but I really like foot switches that just allow you to use any old cord you have. I can use whatever length I want, I can use whatever cord I want, and all I have to do is plug it in now, and my foot switch is going to work great. I don't have to, you know, take the end off some cord if it breaks or if my wire goes bad. I don't have to hardwire another one in. So putting the jack in is really worthwhile. We can turn that off. Then you're going to solder on your switches, and I also picked this up at the thrift store. The coolest clamp ever. It allows me to hold stuff so that I can work on it without it moving around. Pretty cool. Again, you know, it's like $2 1/4 or something. And that's just too cool. So you want to be able to work on, have that steady, and tin your wires first. You'll need to wire strip your wires. You'll need some wires. I always save scraps of wire from stuff I pull apart. So I've got this nice few wraps of black and red. This is probably 18 gauge wire right here. Don't go smaller than 18, it's not good. But just leave yourself a little tiny bit of, just need the littlest bit of wire right there, and you'll want to put some solder on that first. Put some solder on this first. It's called tinning. And then you put some solder on the pin as well. Then you join the two together by just heating both up. So tin everything first, tin all your contacts, and you'll just go red to one of these, like the center pin could be black. Let's make the center pin black. And then let's make the other pin red. And then it really doesn't even matter what you do over here. But since we went center common, you could go ring black as well. Ring being the shaft of your plug. And then the tip up here could go ahead and be red if you like. Doesn't really matter unless you're using a stereo cord. And then you have to be a little more particular. All right, and then do all your soldering outside of the box. I find that easier. Leave yourself a service loop. So I've got plenty of wire in here. Another tip that took me several. Used to be really try to get everything just the right size, but the more wire you can stick in here, the easier any further repairs will be. All right, so put that back in there. Before you mount it, we got to have a sticker. I picked this one out, Pleasant Grove Pumas, and then I cut away the material around the hole. Slip our foot switch through, put our jack through on the other side, make all those last minute adjustments, then put our assembly back together, put the screw in, put the coke in the nut, put the lime in the coconut, screw that back together, and I think we would probably, I'll end up putting some rubber feet on this as well. There we go. And then tighten these down last. Make sure everything's nice and snug. And there you have yourself a great little foot switch to operate that boost, that reverb, or that single channel switching. Awesome. Out.